Almost 50,000 Cubans from the Miami area in Florida are facing deportations.
I will vote for Donald Trump. I will vote.
Raise your hands, come on.
For Donald Trump.
I myself am Cuban. My whole family is immigrants, so you would think, hey, I'm pro-immigrant. He can offend Cubans tomorrow and I wouldn't care, as long as my life is better and my peers are enjoying their life as well.
What I would like to see is more jobs come up here, less war, a backbone for America, a better immigration policy. My father came here, got us all citizenships from overseas. He had 4 children. He brought us into all those things to give us a better future. Things are haywire. Let's see what we could get done in this go around with Trump.
I know tons of people that just came from Cuba 20 years ago, doctors, and they've done their American dream. They've done their due process.
I wanted to see Trump back in the White House.
What motivated me basically is that we want a united America, peace, and we want somebody strong as our president, someone that's not spewing hate. I'm totally against hate. Totally against not allowing people that want a better future to come in. I think there's a way to fix that instead of fighting. And I definitely would hate to see somebody with a dictatorship mentality become president.
I know you have some experience with Fidel, so what do you think about that?
You have an idea. I know a dictator. I know. It's a complete opposite thing, okay? Don't even go there. To know what I think about Kamala, what's her name? The witch? What is?
Kamala.
Kamala. Well, what I think about Kamala is pretty simple. What she's an expert on or in.
Putting people in jail as a prosecutor.
She's gonna put the country. She's a businesswoman?
No.
What she know how to do? She's gonna make it. She's trying to do an experiment. And we're gonna be there. And the experiment, okay? She's gonna try her poop. And then she's gonna put the whole country in a debt. And then she's gonna do what she does best. That is?
Put people in jail.
Put people in jail. So she only know how to put people in jail. What are you gonna expect? I mean, country in jail so we can pay the debt that she have. That's what actually is gonna happen. We need a business person to deal with this country. Strong leader, somebody that know about war, somebody that have experience, negotiation, etc. etc. We said Marxismo Leninismo. You don't want to get there. You don't want to go with Lenin. Okay? It makes no sense. I don't want to say what the judge, Joe, what's his name?
Joe Brown.
Joe Brown said. But basically, it's right there.
Dear Cubans, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked of the Venezuelans. But here's the thing. See, you thought your racism was going to save you from those consequences. And they didn't. Well, the only thing I can say is, have a nice trip, bye!
No, it's not funny. It's really not funny. I'm not laughing because it's funny. It's just very ironic and crazy how can I say this? Throughout the election, I saw so many Cubans, Venezuelan, a bunch of Latinos saying with their whole chest, not voting for Kamala. There was this guy even that he was getting harassed by his neighbor that didn't even want him around, but he carried his Trump flag, proud to vote for Trump. But I just wanted to come out here and let them know and ask if they have seen Trump's plan. Have they seen who Trump have elected to run the immigration and his plan for the mass deportation?
This question is for Cuban Americans and Cuban Americans only. I'm going to say it with my whole fucking chest. I'm going to say it in English because I know you understand me. Because you're a U.S. citizen who just voted for this piece of shit human trash can in the White House right now. How can you look your family members in the eye? You know, the family members that you just brought over from Cuba, that you just helped bring over here in the last 2 years with Biden's CBP-1 program. How can you look them in the eye and tell them that you love them when you voted for the motherfucker who just, with the stroke of a pen and a memorandum in the last 48 hours, has completely invalidated their immigration status?
Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Robi Masaga. Today we need to have a serious conversation about what's happening to Cuban immigrants in America, especially those who voted for Trump. Many of them thought they were different, that Trump's harsh immigration policies would only affect other people. But now reality is hitting hard. They are facing deportation just like the same immigrants they once looked down on. This situation raises some big questions about trust, selfishness, and political manipulation. To understand why this situation is so ironic, we need to look at why so many Cubans went to America in the first place.
Why do Cubans vote Republican? Well, I get asked this question a lot every time I make a post explaining the Republican Party and what anti-immigration laws that they pass, and comes up with the comments, well, the Cubans are the one that votes for the Republican Party. Why do they do that? Allow me to explain. Now, I'm not speaking for every Cuban, but I am explaining why a lot of Cuban Americans do vote Republican. And this primarily has to do with the fact that the Republican Party aligns themselves more with anti-communism than the Democratic Party. And since Cuba is a communist country and the Cubans that come to America are anti-communism, they align themselves politically more with the Republican Party than the Democratic Party. That's reason number one. And number two is that the Republican Party courts the Cuban American Party more than the Democratic Party. This is something historically they have had more impact in the community. They have made more efforts in communication, and the Cuban American Party has really aligned themselves and appreciated the efforts that the Republican Party has made towards them more so than the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is also more open in communications with the Cuban government than the Republican Party is, because they take a stronger position against the Cuban regime. And this is something that is appreciated more with Cuban Americans towards the Republican Party. Even though it was a Democratic president, Lyndon B. Johnson, that gave Cubans the immigration benefit that they have now, the Cuban Adjustment Act, they still align themselves and have more of a relationship with the Republican Party than the Democratic Party.
How can you look them in the eye and tell them that you love them when their humanitarian parole may no longer be valid? When their I-94, the legal visitation process that they went through to come to the U.S., to change their status after they're here for a year, that immigration process, that legal immigration process, how can you look them in the eye and tell them that you love them when you are the reason they no longer have immigration status in this country?
For decades, Cubans fled their country due to political and economic hardships. Many left seeking freedom from communism, hoping for a better life in the US. Unlike many other immigrant groups, Cubans are given a unique advantage under the Cuban Adjustment Act, which allowed them to apply for residency after a year. Because of this policy, they were often treated better than other immigrants. While other groups faced deportation and strict immigration laws, Cubans were welcomed with open arms because of the US government's position to the Cuban regime. Many Cuban immigrants worked hard and built successful lives in the US. However, some began to align themselves with conservative politics, believing that because they were against communism, they naturally fit into the Republican Party's ideology. Over time, many started supporting candidates like Trump, thinking they would be protected. But politics is never that simple. No one deserves to be deported simply for wanting a better life. Most immigrants, whether Cuban, Mexican, Haitian, or from anywhere else, move to America because they are searching for safety, stability, and opportunities. The irony here is that many Cubans supported Trump, thinking that his immigration policies would only target others, like Central Americans or undocumented Mexicans. But what they fail to realize is that once a system of oppression is created, it doesn't pick and choose who it affects. A policy designed to remove immigrants will eventually apply to all immigrants. No one should have to live in fear of deportation, especially after building a life in the US. These are hardworking people with families, businesses, and dreams. Many of them contributed to the economy, served in the military, and paid taxes. but because of the very same policies they supported, they are now being told to leave. It's heartbreaking, and it shows why it's dangerous to support leaders who only use people for political gain. One of the saddest things about this situation is that many Cuban Americans voted for Trump, even though they had family members who are still undocumented or vulnerable to deportation. Imagine this. You vote for a president thinking his policies wouldn't touch you, but then one day your cousin, your uncle, or your friend is arrested by ICE and sent back to Cuba. Some of these same voters are now watching their family members suffer because of the same policies they helped to put in place. How can you support a system that punishes your own people? This is why voting should never be about just personal gain. Some Cuban Americans were so focused on trying to align themselves with conservative politics that they didn't stop to think about the bigger picture. They didn't consider that immigration laws apply broadly, that once a government starts cracking down, it won't just stop at one group. The betrayal here is real because they helped create a system that is now coming after their own families and communities. The truth is, some people only think about themselves. They believe that as long as they are safe, nothing else matters. This kind of thinking is dangerous. Many Cubans assumed that because they were seen as good immigrants or because they had a history of voting Republican, they would never be affected by Trump's policies. But what they didn't realize is that Trump never cared about them. He only cared about their votes. This is a lesson for everyone. When you vote for policies that harm others, don't be surprised when those same policies eventually come for you. Selfishness blinds people to reality. Instead of thinking, how does this affect everyone? Some people only ask, how does this affect me right now? But decisions like this have long-term consequences. This is why solidarity is important. If Cubans had stood with other immigrants instead of dancing themselves, maybe they would have had stronger protections now. But too many people believe that their status, their privilege, or their political alignment would save them. Now they are facing the same struggles as the people they once ignored. This situation also proves that people need to stop blindly trusting politicians, especially ones like Trump who only use immigrants for votes. Trump made many promises to Cuban Americans voters. He used strong anti-communist rhetoric, telling them that he was on their side, but once he got their votes, he didn't protect them. Instead, his administration cracked down on immigrants across the board, including Cubans. This is classical political manipulation. It's a lesson that people need to remember. Politicians will say whatever they need to get elected, but once they are in power, their action speaks louder than words. Trump didn't care about Cuban immigrants. He cared about winning Florida. And now many Cubans who trusted him are realizing they were just pawns in a political game. This is why people need to do their research before voting. Don't just support someone because they say what you want to hear. Look at their policies, their history, and their real impact. Otherwise, you might find yourself in the same situation as the Cuban immigrants, betrayed and suffering because of your own vote. The Cuban immigrants' situation is a tough lesson in politics, loyalty, and self-awareness. Many Cubans thought they were immune to Trump's immigration policy. They believed that by supporting him, they would be safe while others suffered. But now, they are facing the same deportation and struggles as the people they looked down on. This should be a wake-up call for everyone. When you support harmful policies, don't assume they won't come for you eventually. Politics is not just protecting yourself. It's about making sure the system is fair for everyone. Let's continue this discussion on the comments, guys. And also remember to subscribe, like, and share as well. And until next time, bye-bye.